Ben, in the current landscape, why is responsible artificial intelligence important?
Well, there's a lot of push right now for rapid adoption of artificial intelligence, especially in industries who've been traditionally slow to adopt that technology. And this is a technology that poses a lot of fresh challenges. It does a lot of things that existing technologies have never done. Not all of them are entirely understood. And that leaves us open to a lot of risk when we're adopting this technology. Adopting some form of standardized policy procedured framework for how you're utilizing it or working with it is critical to ensuring due diligence and maintaining your position in the market. Bobby, outside of security risks, what sort of operational risks do you as a technologist see for the adoption of artificial intelligence?
Well, when it comes to the adoption of AI, we can see a few very common risks that appear in a lot of cases. One of them is that unlike more traditional software development, when it comes to AI projects, it's more complicated to plan for the outcome before we actually start working. And the reason for this is the heavy reliance on data. And before we start working with the data, we can't really have a very clear idea whether this data is good enough for the outcomes that we are looking for. So this by itself creates a lot of complications, and we need to be aware of that. And in addition to that, the level of adoption is different than what most people think. And this is mostly because people with more technical background are faster to adopt AI tools, which can create additional gap between different users. And this, of course, can be mitigated by proper training, raising the awareness, and making sure that we are not reliant too much on AI.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those technical risks that artificial intelligence poses?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of technical risks that AI creates, but some of the most common ones relate to biases coming from the data, for example, because if we input biased data into an AI system, it will learn these biases and sometimes even amplify them. So we need to be aware of the risk of creating even additional biases and putting them on the market. And this is not only coming from the data. Different algorithms fit and work better with different types of data. And all of this needs to be tested and tried while we are planning and during the actual project execution. So again, technical risks, there are quite a few of them. We just need to prepare properly for them. And this is where recent regulations also come in. What's your take on them?
At this time, regulatory is difficult to judge. It's rapidly changing. We're seeing a lot of different takes on how to go about regulatory. Certain sides of the world are more in tune with leaving the market completely open, and certain other places are significantly more strict and closed in what they're expecting people to be able to adopt this technology too. And this poses a big challenge for organizations that are global and they're trying to create a product that can work in one or more markets. They have to be able to plan ahead for regulatory at a global scale. And that's a moving target. Regulations change and new regulations come into place frequently. So it's a lot of staying up with the news, figuring out what is coming around the corner and how to prepare for that and plan ahead for it. And using traditional, well-adopted frameworks and well-known frameworks, things like the NIST 800 or the IECs, the ISOs of the world, to ensure that you're doing things in the way that future regulatory will likely evolve. And it's a big risk, too. Sanctions are expensive, and regulation can run the risk of pulling you off of the market and losing you your market share, where, a better planned competitor remains in the market share. You can't get that time back. With that in mind, Bobby, at this time, do you believe artificial intelligence has the capacity to be unmanaged post-deployment?
To some extent, and automation is certainly possible. However, this shouldn't be the case. And even outside of heavily regulated industries, We need to be careful because there's model drift and other problems that can occur after deployment, after a product is already on the market. In addition to that, we should be aware of the hype and the over-reliance on AI tools, because a lot of people have unrealistic expectations of what they can get out of using an AI tool or an AI system. And this over-reliance can result in reduced critical view over the output, and over the long term, this may cause some certain issues. So having said that, in your experience, what are the most common consequences of such unmanaged risks?
Well, I think the most important consequence of it is financial damage. So if we're talking about the risk to an investment, if you put hundreds of thousands of dollars or even more money into building an information system or a utility or a tool for your clients, and losing the work that's been put into that, or having it be decommissioned or sanctioned, et cetera, there's a financial risk there. And there's also risk to reputation. If something goes wrong with it and it leaks a patient's data or a bank account or something like that, that can put your organization in a very unfavorable position in the media. And that reputational damage also equals financial damage. Can you create compensating controls for these risks utilizing technology, or is this something that a person still needs to be in control of?
Both, because there are ways to automate evaluation and testing of models and AI systems. And we should do that. We should plan for it. And you need the right expertise to do it. However, it doesn't come down just to engineers testing and ensuring that what we put out on the market is responsible. We need to ensure that different points of view have been taken into account. So what is the best practice is to build a consortium of people with different backgrounds. So you have the engineers, you have the data people, you have the security experts, but you also need very good domain knowledge and other types of expertise within the project group that throughout the life cycle will critically look at what we are working on and ensure that once we are ready to ship it, we have done whatever we can to ensure it is responsible and it's not creating additional risks. And this all comes down to having the right AI strategy. What do you think about that? Why is it important?
Well, I completely agree. And having a proper strategy when you're going into doing something like this is key to success. One of the most critical components of this is being able to demonstrate due diligence and having some sort of traceable path between what it is that you've designed and what it is that you've actually created, and being able to prove that you've made exactly what you said you're going to make. It does only exactly what it's supposed to do without any other drift or issues or biases, things like that, and that there was a plan for it. So I don't think that it's possible to completely mitigate risk, but it is possible to prove that you did everything that you could.